Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Baugh, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. You must call every friend you have to watch the program today. I'm very serious about that. You need to call every friend you have, but listen at the same time. We have today a cryptozoologist as my special guest. He has traveled the world over. What is a cryptozoologist? That's someone who examines reports of creatures and entities that supposedly have been extinct for a long period of time, and someone who solves mysteries that previously had a different interpretation. A man with insight and determination. And that describes our guest today. Now, Dr. Dennis Swift has been a friend of mine for a number of years, has been an emissary of the Creation Evidence Museum in making special arrangements with museums in other parts of the world for acquisition of priceless treasures, all through the proper legal channels. And there is always a channel through which these things need to be done appropriately. This man is rare. You have to see what he brought to the platform and to your life today. Dr. Swift, Dennis, it's a joy to have you. You and I have talked about this for a couple of years.
Yes.
But you were normally traveling somewhere off in Afghanistan or Peru, or looking through some of the mines or caves in other parts of the world, and all at the same time making a living. How do you make a living doing all of that?
Well, I also pastor a church. Yes.
Oh, okay.
That Church of All Nations in Beaverton, Oregon, yes.
Well, this man is not only a theologian, he's a PhD in an academic field as well. I have a lot of friends, and each has characteristics. You have determination to find the truth about an issue. You also never forget where you've been. You and I have been down some trails, and rather than have to glance at a map, you know exactly where to turn, what fence to cross, what rock was there 20 years ago when you saw the place before. God's given you a special gift there. You know the Lord, don't you?
Yes, very much.
That's one reason you're determined to solve many of these mysteries.
Yes.
We have so much to talk about today that we can't just pass the time. We must get serious about this. Back in the 1950s, Eric von Daniken published a book, a little later than the 50s, 60s, 70s. Eric von Daniken published a book, Chariot of the Gods. He made certain claims. That became a bestseller and determined the mindset of a generation. But Dr. Dennis Swift wanted to find what the real facts were about the Nasca lines. Now, we have three great Indian tribes of the past that inhabited the Peruvian plains: Nascas, Incas, and Tiahuanacas, correct?
And also the Vicas and the Paracas Indians in the same geographical region.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And they practiced certain things for hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. And we're going to learn today some of this first time exposed to the public. So let's begin over here with the Nasca lines. These have made history and have been very famous. What do we have in the Nasca lines?
The Nasca lines is the world's largest scratch pad. The earth's skin is used as a canvas of art. It's a big doodling pad. But what we have here on the Nasca plains, in a desert region of 800 square miles, and roughly these figures and lines cover 135 miles by about 25 miles. What we have is over 13,000 lines like this. We have over 700 trapezoids and over 80 large animals and humans on colossal dimensions. In fact,
by colossal, how big?
Well, the largest is over 800 feet long. Right? These can only be seen from the air, and they're a mystery, an unexplained mystery for the most part. You know, the origin of civilization. A lot of people want to say, well, man was not the beginning. There had to be aliens who came down. This is Eric von Daniken when he wrote Chariots of the Gods. And also, he sold more than 60 million books. And he takes, for instance, the lines and says that they were aerial spaceport runways for landing ET extraterrestrials. But if you look closely here, You'll see this is one that's over 6 miles in length, 2,500 feet across, and it's laser straight. So absolutely laser straight. I do not know if we have a combination of technological equipment that could duplicate these lines today.
Now, how deep is this pavement?
This is very soft earth, so a spacecraft could not have landed here. But also, the way they laid it out and so forth, it's a mystery to us. But, you know, there's a lot of chronological snobbery. That is that evolutionists would see that ancient man is a bunch of mental morons, while contemporary man is a bionic brain species.
And it's really just the opposite.
It wasn't, when the fall of man was downward, not upward. It's not the ascent of man, it's the decline of man. And so ancient man is portrayed as a beetle-browed, barrel-chested, bow-legged brute with bulging biceps, peanut brain, drooling savage, knuckle-dragging, and wasn't technologically advanced. So therefore, you can either go to the theory that aliens came down, or you can give man his rightful place in history. These were laid out by the Nasca Indians, and precise. Now over here we have one of the colossal figures. This is a spider. This spider is 150 feet long. It's one continuous line of more than a half mile. What's incredible and astonishing about this spider...
Now you need to hear this, audience. Are you awake? You need to get this information in the next minute. Okay, Dr. Swift?
This is a rare species of spider, the Racanelia, from the Amazon, more than 1,000 miles away. It's only about 1/8 of an inch long, barely detectable to the human eye. But during reproduction, its third leg becomes a protrusible tube that expands, and on the end is the reproductive organ. This can only be seen under a high-powered microscope.
Say that again for the sake of the audience.
This can only be seen under a high-powered microscope. So they had to have had some kind of technology. Now, Marilyn Childs Denny has proven conclusively that there was evidence that they used lenses and other mirrors and so forth to build telescopes to look into the constellations and the stars.
Now, remember this point, because in a few moments before this program is over, you're going to observe some rocks taken from the tombs, and you're going to see procedures that are paralleled only by our very best medical procedures of this day. I told you you needed to call a friend to watch this program. So, Dr. Swift, you're saying that in order for them to represent this on a colossal scale, but to represent it at all, they had to have precision instruments, optical instruments, magnifying lens, to say the least.
Yes, it only can be seen with a high-powered microscope, and not only that, to lay it out in such detail on the ground where it can only be seen from the air.
Marvelous.
How could they do that?
Now they have additional
This is the first time this is going to be seen publicly. This was officially excavated in 1959 in Nasca. It is a piece of vicus pottery that has been authenticated by the Dumbarton Oaks Museum, Washington, D.C., many other foremost pre-Columbian museums in America. There's no question that this is vicus. It's 100 to 400 AD. What mystifies the authorities is this. Why does it look like a steamroller?
And this is the rear angle of the same.
And it has wheels. It has wheels. And they had knowledge of it more than 1,500 years before the Industrial Revolution.
Marvelous.
But inside on this, if you'd hold this again upwards, you'll see not only the wheels, but on the inside there's a man inside here at like a wheel and a control panel. And if you look at the back, it's like tires. This is truly from 100 to 400 AD.
Marvelous technology. Now, Dr. Swift, for this audience, for the first time ever, is going to solve a great mystery at this moment, right now. Dennis?
Yes, I received an archaeological permit by the Peruvian government in April of this year, and I did some excavations and some aerial photography of the Nazca lines. This was identified by Eric von Däniken as an astronaut, and it's known around the world as the astronaut that this is an alien. And von Däniken sold over 60 million books. Now, even the Peruvian authorities were astounded because we pointed out this is not an astronaut.
You're the one who found this to be the case.
It's a fisherman. And if you look right here to the right, this figure is over 10 stories high, over 100 feet high. It's on the side of a mountain in the desert. He is holding up his right hand, and there's a fishing line, and there is a 60-foot fish. He's a fisherman.
Yes.
Now, not only that, he's wearing the celebration costume of a Nascan fisherman, which was like a skirt-like object. So if it's an alien, why is he wearing a skirt and holding up a fish? Many other things about the Nasca lines. Whatever they drew, they also did on pottery. We find the pottery examples. I have a piece of pottery here.
This is priceless.
Yes, it's one of maybe 3 in the world. This is from Paracas, the same area that inhabited the Nasca Plains. This is a fisherman from 2,500 years ago, about 500 BC. And they wore distinctive hats, yes, and they displayed their catch. They had nets. In fact, this one is holding up, a fisherman is holding up on his left hand a fishing net.
Yes.
This shows, and in all their pottery and in their drawings, they were just shown with big eyes, because the fisherman would have to probably have good vision to spot the fish in the ocean.
On this program, just now, Dr. Swift solved a problem that has mystified scholars for 4 decades. And that deserves a real hand of applause.
As Clifford Wilson says, crash go the chariots.
Crash go the chariots.
And
now, for sake of time, let's look at this before we get to the actual artifacts.
This is a piece of mochi pottery from about 700 AD. We know the mochis were advanced in technologically surgeries and practice of medicine along with the Nascans. And we see an amputation and a prosthesis here. Not only that, there's a tattoo here on his face. This is in the Rafael Largo Herrera Museum in Lima, Peru, part of the official national collection. There's also on his face, they used to tattoo their bodies. There's a tattoo of what appears to be a dinosaur next to his nose.
Marvelous, marvelous. Now we get to some priceless treasures.
What we have here is 2 stones. There's a number of stones that have been found in Inca, in Tiwanaku, Nasca, and other tombs. And some of them depict, with astonishing accuracy, surgeries. This stone is of a heart surgery. It's probably about 1,500 to 2,000 years old, this stone. There's other collaborating evidence that people performed heart surgeries. Very few people know that in 1969, the Soviets sent an expedition to Turkmenistan, the Marmajan expedition. There they found Neanderthal skeletons that were supposed to be 80,000 years old. But they also found among the skeletons, and this was reported in the official Soviet publication in Science Journal, November 1969. And they found that the Neanderthals practiced heart surgery. They found the skeletons with a precise, exact cut into the cardiac window, the retraction of the ribs, and not only that, that it healed because of the fibrous membrane around it and the bony deposits.
Marvelous.
That they were much more advanced than we ever realized.
So ancient man was not so stupid after all.
No, in fact, the success ratio in trephination, the opening of the skull and performing excising tumors and other surgeries of the brain and head, they found out they had an 80+% success ratio. And the Europeans were so prejudiced in their arrogance that they would not even recognize it because it surpassed 18th and 19th century medicine. Long before Columbus arrived in the Americas, pre-Columbian surgeons were forging ahead with brain surgeries, heart surgeries, cesarean sections, bone transplants. They use catheterizations. They also were curing diseases that are still confounding modern science.
We have the open heart surgery, but now
we
have in Baugh relief. Would you describe what is going on here?
What we have here is a open surgery and some type of brain surgery. More information, the skull is opened and the brains are visible, and the operation.
Incredible, incredible. So the creation position is that man was superior from the beginning, and even so superior that he did not need all the technological advancements that we have today. Innately, he was able to make decisions that were incredibly accurate and incredibly successful. Dr. Swift, I think you have some of the actual tools used in surgery from the tombs.
I'm very fortunate that I do have some of the physician's tools from tombs. I do not know all that they were used for, but these are, some of them are bronze and obsidian and other tools. These are the physician's tools buried next to the physician's mummies in the tombs. For instance, here's a tombie, it's bronze, and they use this for surgeries. We also have pottery pieces that show them operating from the mochis and other civilizations. There is a set of tweezer-like devices that works better than our modern tweezers. And this is about 2,000 years old.
Can you hold that still for the camera for just a moment and use it as a set of tweezers? Yes.
And of course, there's an assortment of small knives, metal scalpels.
We're so fortunate that you brought these to the program. Now, you showed me a knife, a precision instrument.
This is a scalpel. It has an obsidian blade. It is wafer thin. It is super sharp. In fact, National Geographic a few years ago did a test on obsidian scalpels. Far from being crude technology, at 10,000 power magnification. Let me say that again. At 10,000 power magnification under a microscope, that this is very keen and sharp. Whereas surgical stainless steel scalpels that we use in surgeries, they're pitted and grooved.
Marvelous.
Sharper.
Superior
in
technology.
fact, Donald Crabtree and some other archaeologists, when they had open heart surgery, they had the surgeons use obsidian scalpels for a number of reasons. Number one is it does not bruise the cells. The body heals faster. And number three, the scarring is diminished. They were very advanced. We know that by the megalithic builders. For instance, the largest stone we can move with our modern equipment is a 160-ton stone. Yes. But they regularly moved 400-ton stones.
Incredible.
From a distance of more than 200 miles, like at Tiwanaku. A 400-ton stone is the equivalent of 1,000 large family-sized automobiles. Not only did they move them, but they placed them together so tightly, like putting your fingers together. It's tighter than that. You can't put a razor blade through it today. You can't put anything through it, a piece of paper. And this is thousands of years later, after earthquakes and everything else. But on top of that, not only did they cut and move stone, but they figured mathematically and everything else, the indention it would make in the earth before they placed it down.
Now, say that again. On a number of the telecasts in recent months, I've told you about the Fibonacci series, the golden mean, the ability of man long before the technology and the computerization of our day. Here, Dr. Swift is verifying that again. Would you say again the mathematical precision with which they function?
And Tiwanaku and other places in South America, they mathematically precisely figured the weight of the stone, how much it would make an indention in the earth before they laid it down. In fact, they laid the place out so precisely that there's no way we could duplicate it. And not only that, they just didn't cut square blocks of stone. They made angles. And one of the stones has 44 different angles on it, and they interlocked the stones together.
And what pleases me is that we have evidence that these were not aliens interacting with human beings. We have evidence of this technology performed by human beings, evidence memorialized in the tombs. For instance, when a person would accomplish some unique exploit, then that would be memorialized with these stones, and the procedure was to take a rock, cover it with clay, etch into it, bake it. Is that correct?
Well, several techniques. Also, they also did stones in bas relief. They carved away the stone.
And this is semi-bas relief here.
But some of the stones they did, we could have a very hard time anyway carving the stone away from it and making it stand up in bas relief. Very difficult process. An incredible thing about the stone workers of ancient times. For instance, in Egypt, Sir Flanders Petrie, who was a French archaeologist in the late 1880s, he found out when he looked in the sarcophaguses and the tombs of Egypt that when you use a high-speed drill, it leaves revolution, little marks, speed marks all right, as it goes whisk around. Christopher Dunn, a machinist for 17 years, has investigated that. In Egypt, too, they cut in diorite. We use diorite today to cut diamonds. We can't work with diorite stone very well at all. They use diorite, the hardest stone. But in the sarcophaguses, when you look inside, like today, even if we machine something, we have an instrument, you'll see a little light underneath, because we cannot machine it in such a way that it's smooth and totally all the way across. But in the sarcophaguses of Egypt, there's no light underneath. And they use some kind of high-powered tools.
Yes. And
yes.
What we're seeing here is that aliens were not involved. Actual tools used in what we can observe have been found. So again, we're talking about the genius of man. And in the moments that are remaining,
is we have some fabrics, like your shirt and my shirt's probably about 70 to 90 threads per square inch. But the hot air balloon is about 165 to 180 threads per square inch, or a silk parachute equivalent of about 170 to 180 threads per square inch. Regularly, the ancient people, they were superior in weaving, the Nascans and the Procas people especially. For instance, they regularly wove things. Now, this right here is about 1,600 years old. It has that soft, vibrant, exquisite, harmonious polychrome colors after all that time in the desert. But it also, they regularly wove things from 190 to 210. Did you hear that? It's superior. But not only that, many of the Procas, now this is not the best example of Procas fabric, but this is over 2,000 years old, this one. But they regularly went over 300 threads per square inch. And the record is 396. There's a fabric in the museum in Peru that they found.
Far superior to our ability with the technology we have today.
Yes. I would reveal another thing that, you know, they say that the Spanish people, the Indian people did not have knowledge of the wheel. In 1878, Desiree Charnay, who was a Frenchman excavating outside of Mexico City in Toltec ruins, he found chariot toys in the tombs. He was labeled a fraud. He was labeled a charlatan in his time. But in 1948, Matthew Sterling was excavating in the Olmec ruins at Tres Zapates, and he found wheeled toys, children's toys. Now, if the Olmecs had knowledge of the wheel as a principle for toys, wouldn't they use it for other machines? Yes. Ramirez, I'm going to reveal this on TV right now. Ramirez was recording about Montezuma II. And in that war, in the 1600s, he talks about that the Aztecs came out with carujas, which were wheeled wagons. And there's two other historical references that they did use the wheel. Now, this is not an original piece. This is an exact replica from the National Museum of Anthropology and History in Mexico City. But this is one of those toys from about 700 AD with the wheels and everything.
Yes. In this, I think you have one other thing to show to us in these closing moments.
This is a vase authenticated by Peruvian authorities. This is now in my possession. It's Nascan. It's about 400 AD, 1,600 years ago. It has been identified that there's a dinosaur on this vase. What they believe to be a dinosaur.
Marvelous.
And it's a drinking cup from Nasca, same place where these artifacts come from.
And he is shown with texture on the skin.
Yes.
He is shown in a living profile.
Dermal spines and a long tail on the back.
And in order to so faithfully represent him, they had to see this creature alive.
Yes.
Now we come to the final emphasis of the program. You today have been exposed to truth, factual evidence that previously no other audience has seen in total. Much of this information is going to be available shortly as Dr. Swift publishes books. And some of this information is available through other sources, but as a composite, you've been privileged to see that which no other audience has previously witnessed. That's the kind of program we have, creation in the 21st century. Our position is that original man reflected the image of God, was in perfect orchestral attunement with all the rest of the creation. Our position is that there's a creator, that we are the offspring of God in the sense of direct creation. Therefore, we must give an account to God. You've seen from ancient civilizations, pagan civilizations, in some respects ungodly civilizations, marks of absolute genius, showing that they too, in their capacity, were designed. Now, how we use that capacity is free moral choice. How you use the information I'm going to give you now is free moral choice. That God who created us cared enough to walk among us, to put our children on His lap, to raise our dead, to give us the promise of eternal life, to go to Calvary, to die for us, to shed His blood, to arise from the dead. And right now, He's approaching you, asking to be received. Wouldn't you just pray this prayer with all your heart? Dear God, I know I'm a sinner. I need Jesus Christ. He is your Son. He arose from the dead. He died for me. I need His blood to cover my sins. Lord Jesus, right now, I open my heart to you. Right now, come in. Save me forever. I'll serve you with all my heart. I trust that you prayed that prayer wherever you are, whoever you are. I trust that today you found that we've been honest with you. There's a creation reflecting in some measure the creativity of God. God bless you as you serve Him.